make sure you get up and stand up for your right to vote. We've only been at this since 1965. That's 55 years, only 55 years. Do not give back what our forefathers fought for. And with that being said, I'm shifting gears. On the line, we have some powerful voices. Dr. Leatrice Brooks, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I am doing very, very well. And you also have the other powerhouse voices on the line with you, Jill Chestang and Miss Jennifer Jackson. Say hello to the people.
Mm-hmm. Hello. Hello, everyone. Hi, Dbl A.
Hello, how's it going?
Great. Nice to be with you again.
I am so very excited. So very excited. So excited that I'm ready to just jump right in. Dr. Brooks, you want to give a recap?
Yes, ma'am. So we were talking about productive communication of frustration and how to engage around racism. And last time we did part 1, which was 3 points: resist, reflect, and reach. And so we're doing part 2 today.
Yes, indeed. So resisting, reflecting, and reaching into part 2 so yes. We can better have tools in our tool bag to navigate this thing called living yes. in this here country.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. All right, so who's going to get into it first?
So there are a couple things you wanted us to talk about specifically or that came up. So what was coming up for you when you wanted us to revisit this topic?
Well, when you talk about racism, and because it's everywhere, it has never died. That is the biggest myth on earth, you know, that it died, it's gone now. No, because some people believe that it did. No, it's just packaged and delivered and presented differently. So because 2020 is a strange and pivotal and frustrating and upsetting and multi-layered an inequitable year, and then you add voting on top of that, there's some relationships that have been challenged or strained. There's, you know, some work relationships, some familial relationships, and just navigating life in general through also the stay-at-home orders and that type of thing. So let's talk about community health. Function, how do we navigate, and racism being the underlying thread of all of this.
So one of the things that come up for me when you talk about like how do we navigate community health, whenever there is a major shift or change or transition, it actually presents us with opportunities. And sometimes what happens, and this is what I mean when we talk about like resisting, is that we get so caught up in what has happened that we miss the opportunity to move forward. And so there are a lot of things that are being presented with us, and a lot of opportunities and things that are starting to show up that could create some real positive change, but we got to get it out of our feelings about it and make sure that we're using those opportunities properly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so when
I think one of the best ways that Dr. Brooks mentions is just by simply being present. And that just doesn't just mean during the pleasant times. That doesn't just mean when you're having self-care, but that means be aware, be present, and get up and stand up and see what can be done and what your role is in that particular part of history.
Absolutely. And being transparent, and it's okay to acknowledge your feelings. You know, that's okay. And however, taking that time to kind of explore or process before you act, and that's important too.
One of the things that was coming up for me as Jill was talking is, and this is something that I've noticed. So when it comes to, I'm gonna talk about COVID and then transition that into like Black Lives Matter and this trauma that Black people have experienced around race. So when it comes to COVID, one of the things that people have said is, oh, well, therapists are going to experience this great surge because people are being traumatized by COVID and they're going through things. And my response to people when they say that is, I'm not convinced that that's what's going to happen. And I'm not convinced that everybody's going to run to therapy, because reality is people don't deal with their stuff. And it's the same thing when it comes to trauma around coronavirus. It's the same thing when it comes to trauma around race. Reality is, as a community, one of the best things that we can do for ourselves is to heal and give ourselves permission to let other people in on that healing process. Because the longer that we stay wounded and we keep babying our wounds, or we just continue to be agitated and irritated, we inhibit our own ability to actually make meaningful progress.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you said babying wounds. Is it babying? Is it, when you hear the, I'm just keeping it real, just leave me alone, I don't want to be bothered, I don't want nobody, and every time I come around, it's, anyway, that in particular individual is the one that's carrying all the stuff, but yet projecting all of these isms onto everyone else.
Yeah. When I say babying, I mean basically we keep tending to the wound without actually allowing it to heal, and we don't do anything that moves forward, right? So it's very easy to get stuck into a conversation of complaining, and we're just venting all the time. But venting is not productive work necessarily. So I need to have a meaningful conversation with someone, and that is designed around, what can I do? What is my next step? Like, let's not just leave it on the table here, but what else can I do?
Yeah, exactly. And not just burying it, because when it comes up, when racism comes up, and especially for people that have experienced it in the past. I'm a child of the 60s, so I just remember my first time experiencing it. And sometimes when these things come up, even though I've dealt with it, but the feelings, they do feel familiar. And it's, those feelings back at that time. So you do have to deal with it and talk about it, and have someone to talk about it with that's safe, that's not going to fuel it in the wrong direction. But you do want to talk with someone that's kind of level-headed and can give you some wisdom, some sound wisdom.
Yes.
Yeah. That just reminds me also of being in touch with what is affecting you. So when you're snapping at somebody or you're fussing at somebody, maybe it's because you've had an experience that day that hit you in that deep place, or that reminded you of something that happened a long time ago or just yesterday. And so being able to say, I'm sorry, it's not you, and finding that safe person to talk to say, man, I don't know why I'm feeling this way, but this kind of hit me a little hard, and I found myself, yelling at the cat or whatever. It's important to be really aware of where those feelings are coming from, so that we can know how to proceed.
Yes.
And then you have the, let's just kind of localize it. A lot of people, the pandemic of COVID, the higher pandemic of racism and inequity, low-income people, the focus is centered on a lot, especially when it comes time to talk about or do the report out in the news. So for low-income people, people of color, and urban areas, that type of thing, the pressures, the feeling of this, or the complete disregard, for lack of a better word, in terms of how people in those communities are handling the systemic assaults on them. So how do we navigate? What are some of the tools or basic tools we can use to better get along in this world, especially during this time?
Well, I think really it goes back to kind of where we started, which is people have to do their own work on both sides of the issue, whether it's Black people have to do their own work and white people have to do their work. That's the only way that something is going to change. And so when you do your work, that's really where, like, therapy is where you increase your awareness of what's actually happening with you, and you gain the tools and the skills to be able to make some meaningful change in your lives and impact the lives of other people. And so there are a lot of resources out there. when we talk about low income people, one of the things that usually comes to mind is Medicaid, right? Well, one of the greatest advancements that Medicaid made was a few years ago, Medicaid only allowed individuals to have 20 sessions of therapy per year, right? That's not even half a year worth of sessions. They only allow 20 sessions a year. Now they allow unlimited sessions a year, no questions asked. People need to be taking advantage of the resources that are made available to them. And so that's how you get to move ahead.
Indeed. And also wanted to find out, as mental health professionals, have you seen, and I know, as you said, Dr. Brooks, earlier, not a whole lot of people are going to be running to you because of what we're in now, but have you seen a slight uptick in your counseling sessions or the number of patients, whether past or new, during this time?
I will say this. So to the statement of people aren't running to us, and it just came to my awareness in a meeting that I was in earlier this week, that people may not know that we're doing therapy online. And so we have the ability to do therapy remotely. At least these days, most people have cell phones, and they have phones with internet access. And so we're able to do therapy. And there are some insurances that are even allowing people to do therapy over the phone. So resources are available, but a lot of times we don't know unless we're actually asking the question about therapy. What have you guys seen in terms of increases in numbers?
As far as my clients, I've seen some previous clients that had not been coming during this COVID. They've been coming back and have been more consistent because of what's going on. And then actually some new ones. I have seen a spike, and with young people, because I work with children. So there has been a slight increase in that area as well, because children are going through it, and they're dealing with it too, and it comes out in their behavior. And some of their parents are wondering, like, well, I don't know what's wrong with them. But just like parents are, adults are going through challenging times, the children are catching or seeing or feeling some things too. It just looks differently, and they handle it differently.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen an increase with cases of anxiety and depression in particular, and also with couples that are saying, because of the quarantine, we're questioning a lot of things. Some that are hoping to make it work, some that are just hoping to make it. So there's definitely, I don't know if it's necessarily related, but I think the quarantine and all of the things that are surrounding our situations right now are really coming to light for people.
Yeah. And it hurts my heart too, working with children, and to hear their story and hear their side of it, how they're feeling, and the fears that they have, that their parents are going to be hurt, or their fathers are going to, it's as a therapist, that kind of that hits you, because they're going through their own struggles as well. However, it's wonderful because they're coming, their parents are allowing them to come, and then I'm at a place where I can process that with them and give them some coping skills. And then we talk about resilience. When you're in situations where you don't have a lot of control, I teach them coping skills and resilience.
I see a lot of people that just
I think that's really important.
Oh, just coming and going and making comments because they know that I'm a counselor, and so they'll make comments about needing counseling, but I think it's kind of like joke. And I'm like, yeah, well, find somebody that you can trust and go and speak. I don't know, for some people, they're not making that leap.
I think it's a good point also about the kids, because one of the things that we forget sometimes in our own frustration is that we're setting an example for our kids in terms of what to do, and in terms of how to cope with situations. And so if we're losing it, what chance do they have to actually make it through? If we're not communicating our emotions with words and we out here acting up and acting out, what are we actually teaching our kids?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so we in turn end up creating more problems for them, because when we long and gone, guess who got to deal with it? They do. They have to deal with the results and the outcome of whatever decisions that we made. Or once they're up and out of the household, if we have not taught them while they were in our household what to do, then when they get out of the household, they have no clue.
Right.
Absolutely.
So true. Mm-hmm.
And there's lessons that can be carried through. So it's not, if you ever face a pandemic again, this is how you comport yourself. But this is when stress hits, when relationships are challenged, when society is going all different directions. How do you act? How do you talk to one another? How do you how do you communicate honestly and openly and do your own work, but still care for those that you're caring for?
Absolutely.
There's a lot involved in that.
Yeah, life skills, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true.
Anything else that's coming up?
And I know for me with children, sometimes I explain to the parents that it shows up in their behavior because they may be seeing some
light again to all of these platforms, employment in the family, friend sections or whatever.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Oh, 2 points, just bring up 2 points. Real quick, engaging in, this change dealing with racism, because yes, COVID is one of them, the pandemic, and the main part of the pandemic, which has not been a pandemic, we can call it that now, because racism, as I said earlier, has not died. It's just presented and packaged differently, right?
Yes.
So in normalizing the notion that racism is reared its ugly head in all kinds of platforms right here in Kalamazoo, in Kalamazoo County, 2 points of just dealing with it. And this, I guess right now it's speaking to that working adult, be it full-time, part-time, half-time, it doesn't even matter.
Mm-hmm. So, I was thinking about points because I had an inkling you were going to ask me about that. And
just two.
But you know what? Really, here's the conclusion that I came to. We need to just reiterate the points that we had before.
Indeed.
Because reality is we still not doing it. We're not doing it. So these skills that we talked about in terms of resisting, reflecting, and reaching, they are repeatable skills. And they're skills that you really need to get in your spirit so that when that trigger comes up and something is said or done, you know how to pause and take a moment to actually resist responding out of that emotion and reflect so that you can intentionally reach out to that person. So we really just have to practice those skills. Sometimes we want to add things on to the information we already have, but we haven't even used or practiced or made the information we already have a habit. So we need to do that and practice that all the time as you're interacting with other people. Practice it with people that you know. When you're having a conversation and you feel like venting and snapping off just to get it off your chest, challenge yourself in that moment to resist, reflect, so that you can reach that person and then have a conversation about what you can actually do to make some positive change.
Okay, I love it. So how then, because, in the heat of the moment, oftentimes is where a lot of us kind of get off track.
Yes.
How do we normalize that point of, I got to resist this?
Yes.
Do our hands get hot? Do we start sweating? How do we normalize being able to recognize that moment of, I need to bite my tongue right now?
Yes. So you're actually on the right track. And the right track is those physical indicators. What happens to me physically? All right. So ladies, what things do you know happen to physically when we start to get worked up?
I know
Like,
one time I was watching or listening to a training by Dr. Gottman, and he was saying that once your heart rate reaches 101, then you're flooded. There's a lot of information that's coming in, and you're already hitting that peak of starting to react instead of respond. And so all of the Fitbits and the smartwatches and all that we have going on, you can a lot of times look at it and see how many heartbeats, per minute or per second or whatever it is going on. And you'll see, you don't necessarily even feel like you're upset. But when I'm marching up the stairs to have a little conversation with my daughter, I'm like, oh, let me check my heart rate. Oh my goodness, I was a little more angry than I thought I was. So for me, it's really using those instruments that we have to just tap in and see, let me just check where I am.
yeah, it's good. And also for me, I haven't graduated to the Fitbit yet. I need to get one of those. However, I know for me, like if my ears gets hot, my face gets hot, my heart start beating fast, I know I need to check myself and try to look for an exit strategy to get out of that situation. If whether it's deep breathing and taking a moment, because knowing how your body responds when you feel it ramping up, like Jennifer was saying too. But then I know, like my ears and my face gets hot, I need to do something different to get out of that situation. Else I'm getting ready to go to 10.
Yes. So I notice within myself and others, I notice rapid heartbeats. I notice sometimes you might get sweat, you might get hot. Sometimes you might break out in a cold sweat, right? You hot and cold at the same time. You might start shaking, your voice might start cracking.
I know.
Your hands are wet and sweaty. Like those are all indicators that something is happening right now. This is a little more intense. And as Jim was saying, I'm going into that reactive space instead of a response space.
Yeah, absolutely.
So paying attention to it in different settings can help you when you come across something that's really intense for you.
Even hearing your own voice. So, sometimes in the middle of talking, I catch myself and I'm like, I'm not really upset about what just happened. I'm really upset about something else. And you can hear that in your own voice. You hear yourself yelling. Well, what you yelling for?
Yeah. You might start talking faster. You might start taking deep breaths. Sometimes people stop making eye contact.
Exactly.
You might move physically closer to the person. So those are all indicators that, okay, wait, I need to press pause. And it's okay to press pause for a period of time. Sometimes I'm like, I need to press pause for a couple days right now because I'm not ready. I am not ready. I cannot talk clearly, succinctly, and represent myself well in this moment.
Absolutely.
And it's all about knowing and being in tune with yourself.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
Yes. So Doc, give us the contact information. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me here on Speak On It and providing some great nuggets and to humanize the situation we're living in. I thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So our contact information is, we're at Chosen P LLC. It's 866-232-5389. And please go ahead and check us out, and don't be afraid to reach out for help, to have a consultation if you're not sure about therapy. We have information on there about what we're doing right now, since we're mostly still meeting with people outside of the office, and what telehealth looks like. And how to get connected. So definitely reach out, because reality is we don't have to continue having the same problems over and over and over again. At some point, it has to get old, and we have to make a conscious decision to do better for ourselves and for everybody that we're interacting with. Because when we're suffering, everybody else is suffering as well, because we can't fully offer the world what we have.
Exactly.
And that's good. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys. Stay well, stay hydrated, and enjoy this wonderful Saturday.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. That was Dr. Brooks and her team at Chosen PLLC, Miss Jennifer Jackson, and along with, who else was it? Jill Chestang. So, guess what? Got to pay some bills, but we'll be back on the other side of the break, and we will hear from my next guest, Miss Arlene McMichael.